You're listening to Rebel Hearts Rising, where we believe your darkest hour holds the key to awakening depth and profound inner wisdom. I'm Tam Burke, and I created this to remind you that when your heart wants to shut down, that's your call to rise, like a phoenix from the ashes. What makes this unique is that every episode is paired with a guided meditation to help awaken your intuition and heal on deeper layers. Together, we'll turn pain into power. I actually feel really lucky for the abuse that I had growing up. Let me clarify. Not because it was okay, not even because it is who it made me today, which it is, but because what I experienced growing up was not okay. And that initial realization helped me realize that I needed help integrating the experiences that I had. And so from a very early age, I went to therapy and started on my self-help journey. I'm going to be 35 this year, and I think that I've been going to therapy for on and off close to 25 years. Like, that's kind of crazy. But actually, I feel really lucky because so often we have covert and overt trauma, or what I call capital T trauma and lowercase t trauma. So capital T, or overt trauma, is abusive experiences that you have growing up. Like, it's clear cut. There's no arguing whether it was good for you or not. And while I work with clients who have both, I find that my clients that have covert trauma, or what we call little case, I think you call that lowercase t trauma, it's trickier. Let me give you an example. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with that their family looks good on paper, right? They grew up in an upper middle class family. Their parents stayed together and are still married. They had a really lovely life. But they came from a family that maybe shoved things down and didn't talk about things. And that kind of covert trauma leads to hypervigilance. To be clear, so does overt trauma. But hypervigilance is actually one of the building blocks to intuition. For years now, I've been studying within myself and my clients and my friends, where does intuition come from? I believe it's a sixth sense and that we all have it. But where does the sensing, where do the spiritual gifts, where does the ability to feel so much and to understand what other people are going through? And this is where, when we start to understand hypervigilance, we begin to understand why so many of us have strong intuition. And today we're going to explore why hypervigilance is a powerful gift for recognizing what's happening in your intuitive capacities, but a giant roadblock for continuing to grow your intuitive gifts. Let me explain. The way that I think about hypervigilance is when we are children and we want to create safety, we look for safety outside of ourselves, which is a totally normal process. If we look in the animal kingdom, if we look in what I call like unicorn or Barbie homes, which means this kind of fake ethereal fantasy of what exists, because let's be real, we're all humans and we're all trying and things get messy, and that's the beautiful rebel-hearted piece of life. And human babies specifically, they don't even realize that they're outside of the mother for the first part of after birth, right? What they call the fourth trimester. And so naturally, we are wired in our beginning stages to orient safety with other people. And now if you grow up in a Barbie unicorn household, what begins to happen is that you recognize safety exists within you. When you come from a household that has covert or overt trauma, you start to create little spidey senses to feel the world around you, to notice if mom and dad are in a bad mood and how I should act accordingly, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. And so we constantly have these tentacles, these energetic ways of feeling. And I really like the visual of tentacles, right? Because not only does it stem from the main piece of our body, but they have all of these little sensors on there, right? And we're essentially sensing the world of safety around us. We're picking up on subtle mood changes. We're picking up on the way people are interacting together. And what we are really doing is identifying and gathering information on our surrounding. And now this is wicked helpful for understanding how intuitive capacities work, how we're able to feel what other people are feeling, how we're able to download information, which is seemingly outside of ourselves, to experience the world around us. However, hypervigilance becomes a problem when, as we grow older, we don't pause to recognize that safety happens within us. That is like one of the most important things that I want to land for you in this episode, in this meditation today. Because when we can orient towards safety being with us, our energetic feeling tentacles, rather than constantly being outside of us, sensing for the world around us, instead come and wrap around us. And we become very aware of what's happening within. This subtle shift is a big deal because it helps us recognize that we are only in control and in command of what's happening within. And then our external world becomes a projection of our internal world. So when we feel safe inside, we feel more safe in the world around us. I want to talk about this in a more pragmatic example. Right now, I have an amazing client, truly soulmate dream stuff. She is a super high performer, and she came to me to work on developing her intuition, as a lot of my clients do. And something that happens with all of my clients is we start with intuition, and we always mix in emotional integration, because intuition and our emotions are linked. And not just that, we spoke about this before, our feelings speak in a similar language to our intuition. So the more that we fold in our own trauma, big or little, the more that we're able to understand what's happening outside of us. So this amazing high-performing client, one of the things that she talked to me about is she's like, I know that this is really silly, but I get really agitated when my house is a mess. When there is stuff everywhere, God forbid you have pets, right? You know, I have 2 dogs. One of them sheds like 6 dogs. I don't want to talk about it. There's dog hair everywhere. And she was talking about how in her house, this sense of cleanliness kind of really rubs on her energetic system. It tends to drain her and it tends to get her really worked up. And part of what we've started working on is this ability to attune to within, so that the chaos outside of us is no longer a dictation of how we feel inside, right? Internal world, external world, as so within, so without, right? And so we start to lean into understanding when we've had experiences that cause us to connect to safety outside of us, there are going to be a shit ton of triggers for us in your family's mood when you go home, in work issues, people not liking you, in cleanliness, right? Because your energetic system right now is completely focused on what's happening outside of you. I'll give you another example. I like to talk to my clients about it like this. Let's say that we have 100 arrows for easy math, and the arrows point in or point out. If 100 of your arrows are constantly pointing inward 100% of the time, we lean towards narcissism, right? But notice that I said 100% of the arrows 100% of the time. So the spectrum's all the way over here. Then, if your arrows are pointed outside of you, 100 of your arrows 100% of the time, we lean towards being a martyr, right? So we have 2 very different ends of the spectrum. Now, what happens for most of us is a ratio proportion. Sometimes 40% of our arrows are facing out, Sometimes 40% of our arrows are facing in, and it's going to shift based on what we have going on. Now, those of us who have experienced any sense of trauma that led us to want to feel to our external environment, we have more of our arrows pointed outwards a higher percentage of the time. And when that happens, we lose our power because we're not connected to ourself as a source of safety. And so this is why I'm crazy passionate about meditating as well, because when I spend time with myself, when I shut my mouth and my eyes and I turn off my brain, or better yet, I have one sense of focus. With a lot of my clients, when we work through this work, we talk about creating safety within. So when I start to feel safety within me, I have a better chance to respond to life's events rather than reacting. And this is a practice, and I try to meditate every single day. And there are still moments that I react instead of respond. We are not looking for perfection. We're looking for continued forward action. And this is why I find meditation to be so beautiful, is because it just pauses everything. Raise your hand if you can process every conversation you have every day. Every text message that you get, every email that you get, every interaction with every human and every animal, etc. And then all of the stuff you have going on at work, any of the family stuff that you have going on. Oh, and all of the thoughts that you have too, which they say are anywhere between like 60 to 120,000 thoughts a day. Y'all. No wonder so many of us feel overstimulated. And those of us who are sensitive, who edge on hypervigilance, that constant sensing outside of us, overstimulation is going to happen super quickly because we're constantly feeling to this external world. And so this practice of sitting in meditation, of being with ourselves, is really about turning some of our energetic sensory experiences to within, to the world that's happening inside of us. Now, I do want to caveat. The first couple times I tried meditating, I absolutely hated it. I had even more anxiety. I think the first meditation I did was a 10-minute guided meditation. I made it 3 minutes in before I was borderline hyperventilating because my brain was like, what am I doing? This is unproductive. I have so much other stuff that I could be doing. And then it climbed from there. My first meditation was like that, and now I meditate every day, and it is the secret sauce to how I turn on my intuitive capacities and to how I orient towards safety, which allows me to better integrate the experiences that I'm having, to turn on my intuition and hear the news through the noise. And yet, so many of us struggle meditating. Why? Well, it's because our minds are used to going a mile a minute, probably even faster than that, if we're being honest. And the act of learning to slow things down is how we create more awareness. Recently, another client told me, she said, I need to become more aware of what I'm actually doing and feeling and thinking. And that awareness can come from creating more space for yourself. And so simply by following these guided meditations that I have with all the episodes, by inviting conscious breath into your life, you create a sense of safety. Here's one of my best hacks for meditating that I really love. In the beginning, not all of us have the bandwidth, the desire, or even the capability to meditate 10, 20 minutes a day. And so instead, can you take 10 breaths 3 times a day? You could do this at meals. You could do this between meetings. Even at work, just simply closing your eyes and taking 10 breaths where all you think about is your breathing. It's really wild what happens when we have all of these senses out here just constantly feeling and picking up information and really overloading our brain, to taking 10 breaths, to take all of this outward floating energy and really wrap it around ourselves. Something that I really love about meditating is I believe that when we tune into our internal world, we open up passages and capacities and ways of being within ourselves that we really don't even have the ability to comprehend, and that I even feel extremely limited by our human ability to talk about what's happening. Because everything is energy. And I think what's really cool is in the collective, have y'all noticed how much it's shifted? People are talking about the vibe now, the energy. We are collectively as a society becoming more aware of the consistent, subtle senses and subtle energies that are playing around us. I believe that even if you are not sensitive to energy, you feel energy. It's frequency. And so we really have this ability to use our hypervigilant senses, our sensitivity, to become our superpower. Something that I would love for you to consider is how often something outside of you is eliciting a response within you that you maybe wouldn't choose. And so whether that is my client and house cleanliness, or dishes, or people's moods and the sensitivity to their moods, or the way that people react or respond that make you uncomfortable, fill in the blank for whatever it is. A work email that triggers you for days that you can't fall asleep because you're thinking about it so much. How might your life shift if instead you created a sense of safety within? You've probably heard before that we have caveman bodies. This nervous system was created for fight or flight. There's a tiger, I need to run, the blood is pumped to my hip flexors, my body needs to move, I want to run. Now, that same response is happening with emails that we get, and it's triggering a larger fight or flight response. But I want to even go farther, because I think that's true, but I also believe that there's a myth within that. And the myth is that we are still attuned to the experiences that we had in our childhood that have caused this heightened sense of reactivity. And we get to move into our own sense of safety, of orienting towards who we are and how we create that. So an example from my personal life is I grew up with a dad who was incredibly reactionary. And when he was reactionary, it would feel incredibly scary as a kid. And so now my partner will react. And even if he's reacting in the most perfect way, he's demonstrating emotions well, right? My natural response is to re-experience what I had as a kid. And so then I meet the moment with my partner, not necessarily about him and his experience, but about my own. And we see how this complicates relationships because we're energetically projecting our wounds onto experiences that might not even belong into the moment that we're experiencing, right? I often call this our ability to meet the moment, to keep the things that have harmed us in the past back there where they belong, and instead to be integrated and understand ourselves in the moment that we're in. So that way, I have the ability to talk to my partner around, here's what's happening for me, instead of making it about them. And where this goes one step even farther is, if we're not aware of our internal world, of creating that safety within, we might also falsely believe that our triggers are coming up when in fact we are experiencing something where a behavior might need to change. And so this is why it's super important to recognize hypervigilance, why trauma is amazing for creating intuition, and why that can't be the only stop on your journey. Meditation has that ability to help us create sacred space and understanding ourselves. And it also provides the pause. How often do you get a shitty work email, you and your partner get in a fight? Immediately, I'm like, scroll Instagram, right? I want to distract myself. I want to keep myself from the courageous, rebel-hearted experience of really sitting in my own discomfort. Because that's also something that gets us in a lot of trouble, is so many of us are experiencing internal discomfort because we're creating our external world to rule what's happening within. And so because we just want to feel comfortable and we just want to create a sense of safety, we don't lean into uncomfortable conversations. We don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and have hard conversations where we might not do things right. How often do you know that you need to have a conversation with someone, but you're so afraid about how you're going to say it and how they're going to receive it? And what if instead, like from our last episode, we stopped being afraid of ourselves and we really peeled back the layers and allowed ourselves to lean into not needing to do everything correctly in order to be able to move forward? Vulnerable conversations are not just about letting our heart be seen, about sharing pieces of ourselves, but about being okay with doing things, but are about being okay not doing things correctly, not always having to have the right answer. And do you see again how that is a response of our arrows, pointing outwards, focusing on how we can do things right? And so this is a beautiful conversation around what changes in your life when you have the ability to feel connected to you, to create practices like meditation where you practice pausing so that in your real life, whether you get in a fight with your partner, whether a friend triggers something within you, you get a work email, or your house is a wreck, you have the ability to sense what is actually happening rather than a triggered response. And this is the power of what we're offering, a reclamation of standing in your fullness to be able to know what's happening inside of you. And what I've seen is that that all comes from feeling like you've got your own back. And part of you having your own back is doing the things that you say that you're going to do, which is why I love to meditate, and I make all my clients meditate too. It's not just the benefits of meditation that you get, and the benefits are endless. We could be here for 6 years talking about that. It's also about doing what you say that you're going to do for yourself, knowing that you are the type of person that shows up for yourself. That creates power. That creates a sense of trust. And that shifts our entire external world because it starts with what's happening within. Okay, I'm excited to jump into our meditation where we are going to pause to orient towards safety within. And I'm really excited because the kind of structure or foundation of this episode is talking about how we experience ourselves. And when we use the external world to experience ourselves, we're going to be in a constant state of chaos. But when we orient towards what's happening within, that is when we can have an entire hurricane happening around us, but we're able to be centered. And I'm not saying that we don't get knocked off balance or have wobbly moments along the way, but actually we recognize that that is part of the journey. We're not concerned with perfectionism, and instead we're allowing ourselves to evolve. Even for me, y'all, it's nervous to do a video podcast like this, right? Like sometimes when we start, I have to get my panting under control and breathe slowly. It's vulnerable. And what I've committed to is evolving publicly. I'm going to grow. My 100th episode is going to be totally different from these beginning episodes. And that's that courage. That's that rebel-heartedness that says, I'm going to lean in the conversations that feel hard. I'm going to show up differently, even though it's like significantly more work to do so. Because when we allow ourselves the grace of moving into not needing to be perfect, not needing to do everything right, we really have the ability to grow. So I'm excited to hear how this landed for you. If you have a sister, a friend who also has experienced hypervigilance, who has some of that lowercase t trauma that kind of covert, sneaky stuff that you only start to recognize usually in your late 20s or early 30s, like, interesting, I've got some stuff I need to work on. Send her this podcast. Let her know that you're not alone. And that actually the coolest thing is working on your, like becoming the woman that you've always been and peeling back the layers. And that's what I want this community to do together. So if this landed, DM me. I want to chat about your experiences, and let's turn hypervigilance into your intuitive superpower. I'll catch you in the meditation.